Disney CEO Bob Iger claims that he has removed the company from the culture war and is no longer infusing messaging into the company's films and TV shows. That's what he's claiming. However, if you just open your eyes and look at what the company's actually done, it's very easy to tell that he is indeed lying. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And Bob Iger did an interview with CNBC. And he was asked this: the woke thing has had more of an impact. You said to me that you would love to be just out of the culture wars. Do you feel you're succeeding in that? And this is what Iger said. Well, I think yes. I mean, I think the noise has sort of quieted down. I've been preaching this for a long time at the company before I left and since I came back, that our number one goal is to entertain. Look, the term woke is thrown around liberally, no pun intended in that regard. I think a lot of people don't understand really what it means. Not true. I think lots of people understand fully well what it means, and you're just running the narrative that people don't know what it means from people that are criticizing you for being woke. The bottom line is that infusing messaging as a sort of number one priority in our films and TV shows is not what we're up to. They need to be entertaining. I don't believe you. I think that is exactly what you have been doing, at least since 2018, probably before that. When you were developing these films, you were definitely injecting messaging. We all see it. You're the people behind these films talk about how they're pushing it. I mean, we have Kevin Feige telling us that the messaging was the reason why the Eternals went to number one on Marvel Studios' production list, because he wanted to have the gender swapping, the race swapping, all put forward. That's exactly what he said. We have that interview, Entertainment Weekly, I believe. So you are a liar. And that was when you were running the Walt Disney Company before Bob Chapek even came in. Next, he said this. And look, where the Disney company can have a positive impact on the world, fostering acceptance and understanding of people of all different types, great. That's not great, because you don't, if people are actively committing evil things and pushing evil ideologies, why would you want to foster acceptance and understanding of that? Absolutely not. You would not want to foster acceptance and understanding. That is utterly ridiculous. And this is why Bob Iger is incompetent and he should not be in charge of the Walt Disney Company. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's a liar. Nevertheless, he goes on and says, but generally speaking, we need to be an entertainment first company. And I've worked really hard to do that. No, you have not. No, you have not. When asked about how he's worked hard to make the company entertainment first, this is how he answered: engaging with our executives, engaging with the creative community, returning to our roots, making sure that everybody is aligned with what our priorities are, and understanding that, look, we're trying to reach a very, very diverse audience. And on one hand, in order to do that, the stories you tell have to really reflect the audience that you're trying to reach. Absolutely not. No, they do not. We have seen how this has been an absolute failure. We've seen Marvel Studios try to embrace this. We've seen Victoria Alonso come out and say that this is exactly what they were trying to do, that they were leaving money on the table. What have we seen over the past couple years? Declining in box office, and now we're seeing massive bombs at the box office. Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, The Marvels, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. You're losing tons of money, and it's not just in the box office. It's on Disney Plus as well. Just look at The Mandalorian, infusion of massive amounts of feminism in season 3. Less people watched it than season 2, even though they had millions more subscribers on Disney Plus. So you're clearly losing money on that because you're not getting subscribers, and the people that are subscribing aren't watching your show. He goes on and says, but that audience, because they are so diverse, really, first and foremost, they want to be entertained. And sometimes they can be turned off by certain things, and we have to be more sensitive to the interest of a broad audience. It's not easy. You can't please everybody all the time. So that is what he had to say to CNBC. They echo what he said during this, or what he is alleged to have said during the shareholder Q&A portion of the 2024 shareholder meeting, where he said that the company's job, it is not the company's job to advance any kind of agenda. This is what he said, or this is what he was asked. Is it possible for Disney to stay out of political and social agenda and just provide entertainment? And he answered, our job is to entertain first and foremost. And by telling great stories, we continue to have a positive impact on the world and inspire future generations, just as we've done for over 100 years. Disney has always been and will continue to be a source of hope, joy, and optimism for people of all ages. Absolutely not. We see this. It's clearly not a source of hope, joy, or optimism for people of all ages. They are clearly pushing evil agendas. They are trying to destroy people. They do this not only through their movies and TV shows, they do it through their programming on ABC News, they do it through their programming on ESPN, and they also do it through the funding of medical practices on for their employees and their employees' children. And remember, Bob Iger in 2018 threatened to boycott the state of Georgia if it wanted to save children from being murdered. So this guy is an absolute liar. And Disney has not always been a source of hope, joy, and optimism. It's pretty much been the opposite for about a decade now. Nevertheless, he goes on and says, we are committed to telling stories that reflect the world around us and using those stories to entertain stories from all walks of life. Like, as my colleague at That Park Place, Jonas Campbell, has to say, why do you want to tell stories that reflect the world around you? We want to tell stories that take us on an adventure into a mystical world that immerse us in different places. I mean, that's what Star Wars was. That wasn't reflecting the world around us. Sure, you can say there were allegories and things like that they drew from, but it was taking us to the stars. It was showing us a totally different world and taking us on the adventure of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia. Look at all of the movies that Walt made, the animated movies. Obviously, those were adaptations of fairy tales that took us on different stories. And now, sure, they had lessons that were involved in them. Obviously, Snow White teaching teaching about the bitterness that can come of jealousy and envy. So that's not to say you can't have universal messages that warn you of things that are wrong and evil. That's what the Walt Disney Company has done, but you can tell it in an entertaining way, and also they transport you into different worlds and different places and different times, and really allow you to immerse yourselves in these different places. They aren't reflecting the world around us. It's just utterly ridiculous. And then he goes on and says, I believe we have a responsibility to do good in the world. If only that was true and your actions reflected that. However, as I've pointed out already, they don't. He then declared, but we know our job is not to advance any kind of agenda. So there it is. He says that his job is not to advance any kind of agenda. That's exactly what he's doing. So long as I'm in the job, I'm going to continue to be guided by a sense of decency and respect. See, that's a problem. Decency and respect. No, you shouldn't be guided by decency or respect. You should be guided by what is right and just and good and moral. That is a huge, huge problem. Decency and respect. No. Good, right, just, moral. That is what you should be guided by. And he says we will always trust our instincts. Clearly, his instincts are decency and respect, not what is true, just, right, and moral and good. So let's just go through some examples here of how Bob Iger is an absolute liar, right? So immediately following the shareholder meeting, it was revealed that they cast Julia Gardner, who I think is a great actress on Ozark, to play a female Silver Surfer in their Fantastic Four film. We have set photos from Daredevil Born Again that appear to confirm rumors that the Punisher will be hunting down police officers wearing the Punisher logo. One can only imagine that that's going to be an anti-police allegory. Talk about the messaging right there. And then obviously the Julie Garner playing the Silver Surfer, that's clearly feminism. They're pushing that. That's that agenda. We have the Disneyland had a After Dark Pride Night last June, clearly promoting disordered sexual behaviors with that, which are not good, just, right, or moral. You also have them partnering with a company called Equal Pride to promote pro-sodomy content that would quote create systematic and meaningful change. Disney Advertising Senior Vice President of Client Partnerships John Campbell spoke to Adweek in May 2023 about this partnership and others with groups such as Cosina, Group Black, and United Masters. He said, what we're trying to do is create systematic and meaningful change in the end. Sure sounds like you have an agenda there, Bob, doesn't it? None of us are here for the heritage months only. We all activate 365 days a year. So if clients want to work with us for 5 days or 52 weeks, we have solutions. And these teams here are all part of those solutions. Surely that doesn't sound like an agenda, does it? That's just last year. That's not even a year ago because we're still in April, and that was in May 2023. We have one of their most recent Disney Plus originals turning the character of Morph into a so-called non-binary character, despite that character being a male in the original X-Men the animated series. They also cast a radical queer activist in JP Karliak to voice the character. Karliak admitted to using the show to normalize disordered sexuality. He said Morph's understanding of who he is could equate to what a modern person would say is non-binary, but he just doesn't have the terminology for it. At the same time, they, them wasn't a concept in terms of using it as a pronoun. So he's clearly trying to normalize this disordered behavior through X-Men 97, but not an agenda, right, Bob? That's what your actor is telling CBR. Not an agenda, though. In November 2023, under Bob Iger's leadership, Lucasfilm introduced a, quote, non-binary character in their Disney Junior series, Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures. In the recently, or I guess it's not recent now, is November, but in the episode Clash, the show's main character, Kai, is introduced to a rival character named Jovi Resmia by Master Zia. When Master Zia introduced Jovi, she says, "Today I'd like you to train with Jovi. They'll give you a different kind of challenge." So clearly trying to indoctrinate preschoolers into this transgender ideology with the use of changing language, rejecting that there are only two genders and that individuals can use they to refer to themselves, even if they are a girl or a boy. It's ridiculous. We also have an anonymous Disney executive confirming the company was pushing agendas just in February of this year. The executive informed Puck writer Matthew Bellany, "Everyone says it's the movie, stupid," which is an easy thing for people to say. More appealing movies are a great way to jump the political issues, but more and more our audience, or the segment of the audience that has been politicized, equate the perceived messaging in a film as a quality issue, because it is. Because the messaging that you have in the film is absolutely wrong and evil. Thus, it is a quality issue. Nevertheless, the executive continued, "They won't say they find female empowerment distasteful in the Marvels or Star Wars, the latest trilogy starring Daisy Ridley, but they will say they don't like those movies because they are bad." Yes, because they're promoting feminism, which is bad. The executive concluded, "So make better movies becomes code for make movies that conform to regressive gender stereotypes or put men front and center in the narrative," which is what you're seeing now and what Bob Iger's pivot is about right now. So this is the Disney executive claiming that there is a pivot. I think we've gone through and shown that there is no pivot happening. It's just Iger talking about a pivot happening. But you literally have this guy defending the agenda and the messaging that are in these films that Bob Iger greenlit. We also have July of last year, under Bob Iger's leadership, the company partnered with Sean Altman, a man who wears young girls' dresses, in order to sell Disney branded products. Not going to show the video, but it's here in the article, which I'll have in the description below. We also have the company employing men who dress up as women to greet guests at their Bibbidi Bobbidi boutique in Disneyland. This video was uploaded to TikTok in May of 2023, right there. Sick. You also have Marvel Comics, which is owned by the Walt Disney Company. Their X-Men editor, Tom Brevoort, claimed that, quote, "The message is the premise for X-Men." This is what he said on X just in December 2023. "It's X-Men. The message is the premise." But that's not an agenda, is it, Bob? And then here, this is the last one. And I'm sure there's a ton of others. I mean, obviously, I just took some that I've covered in the past to disprove what Bob Iger is saying here. And the evidence is overwhelming. I mean, this is just a small sample. But here we have the Acolyte showrunner, Leslie Headland, revealed that the series will promote disordered sexual behavior, given she imagined it as a lesbian fan fiction. This is what she said during an interview at Star Wars Celebration in 2023. "When I saw Frozen as a grown woman, I cried through the entire movie. There was just something about the relationship between the sisters, the like de-villainization of the classic kind of fairy tale bad guy, the concept of true love being between two sisters and not a heterosexual relationship. It just destroyed me completely. And I thought, gosh, I would love to make something like this, for lack of a better term, Disney, meaning something that like my parents would have allowed me to see when I was younger as a queer person, but I would have been able to understand as a queer person. And I think I would have had a completely different life. And so I really was inspired by it and was like, God, I would love to make a story like this." She then took this idea and pitched it as the Acolyte. This is what she said. "And so when I was developing this original idea to pitch to Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, I thought, well, it can't just be that. When you're pitching Star Wars, you have to pull from what George Lucas was also interested in. It can't just be like, well, I'm referencing especially if you're going to get something during the High Republic, end of High Republic, into prequels. You don't have the Skywalker saga. You can't reference a character that was created by George and or Filoni. You have to create your own new character. So she's basically saying that she's creating her lesbian fan fiction and is putting a Star Wars skin over top of it. So that's not an agenda, is it, Bob? So I think the evidence overwhelmingly disproves Bob Iger's claims that he's removing the company from the culture war and not infusing the company's movies and shows with evil messaging, because that is indeed what he is doing. He's just trying to, quote, quiet the noise so people don't actually talk about it as much anymore. And I think that's what he's really saying here. He thinks he's succeeded in tampering down the noise on that front. And it's possible that he has done that. Obviously, he cut a deal with the state of Florida with Sif Todd earlier. I guess it was last month, right ahead of their annual shareholder meeting. So he's done some things to that, but clearly they're still pushing this stuff in their movies. They haven't really released anything this year yet at the box office, so we'll see. Obviously, we'll see what happens with Deadpool 3, but then obviously we're seeing what they're doing with Marvel already, right? We talked about Daredevil Born Again. We talked about Fantastic Four. We didn't even talk about the Rey movie where they brought in an activist to push that movie, where she's like, it's all about pushing her feminism and goals like that. So we didn't even talk about stuff like that. There's so many more examples, and this stuff is not going anywhere anytime soon, because the people that greenlit all this stuff, the people that turned the Walt Disney Company into a political tool, are still there. And the biggest one that is still there is Bob Iger, who's trying to lie straight to our faces. But that's what I got to say on this. Let me know what you guys make on this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.